Welcome to the Stupid X, a valuable antique, reviewing the 2010 Rolex Daytona 1116519 older. Today we're doing a review of a watch. It's a Rolex Daytona 1116519 with a panda dial. The clasp side has notches, unlike current models with shallow clasps and micro adjustments. The clasp has a stepped T-shaped design made of thin white gold with a cylindrical inside. One very important feature of the older panda models is that the side of the clasp has notches. It's different from the current Daytona models, which have a shallow clasp with micro adjustments. The entire clasp has a stepped T-shaped design, and it's made of relatively thin white gold material, while the inside features a cylindrical design. This overall design is quite simple and has a more vintage feel. Additionally, most of the engravings on the inside of the clasp are concentrated in a single area. The overall presentation, fixed in a nested form, is quite simple and has a more vintage feel. Also, most of the engravings on the inside of the clasp are concentrated in a single area. Whether it is the pattern, or the precious metal logo, doghead label, or the 750 label, including the codes inside, are all presented in this table position. In addition, there is the crown of the clasp. You can see that the crown of the clasp of this early Daytona is not like the current Submariner. The crown of the Daytona is not embedded inwards like the current Submariner. It is basically fitted to a flat surface. The entire metal is relatively thinner. The side edge of the clasp has a larger rounded corner. This position also has a larger rounded corner. So we must look at each Daytona watch of different periods differently. There will always be some subtle differences. In today's review, I'll be sharing insights using this original, unmodified white gold panda dial. For more information, you can follow my channel or leave comments in the video section for discussions. Now, why do I say this watch was produced in 2010? If you take a look at the inner case, you'll find the code related to this watch. Each Rolex watch has a unique code for production periods. This watch's code starts with G. We maintained this watch. Watches that start with the letter G were all produced in 2010. As for the different letters and numbers corresponding to different years, I've attached that information on the screen, so you can check and see which year your watch was made. In this episode, since it's an original, authentic watch, with no major modifications, we mainly did a thorough maintenance for the collectors. After all, it's a 10-year-old watch, so I take good care of it. The condition is about 80% new, which is perfectly fine. The key point is that the price of this watch is not expensive. On the other hand, it also highlights the value preservation of this watch. Right now, the secondary market price for this watch is just over $200,000, and it's been worn for over 10 years, right? Being able to sell for $200,000 is really impressive. So, Rolex's overall value retention is definitely strong. Let's take a closer look at the details of this watch. As an original, authentic piece, it should showcase a certain quality, and we don't need to say much about the Daytona since we're all quite familiar with it. The white gold bezel has been updated to a relatively mid-period triangular chronograph scale. Since precious metals aren't particularly scratch-resistant, there are quite a few scratches on it, and you can also see some noticeable signs of polishing on the rounded edges, likely from previous owners. Someone must have refurbished it. But the assembly quality is still very good, and the solid pin axis has no issues at all. I didn't notice any obvious flaws in other aspects. The strap is a custom-made genuine leather strap from a later period, which adds a really unique touch, especially with the two little red lines that accent it nicely. This watch really holds its value well. Plus, I personally love the vintage style of these watches. It is very attractive, especially the buckle. The old buckle and the new buckle are obviously different in details, and it is immediately recognizable. So if it were me, I would have this little thought. If I were to buy a second-hand base, I would prefer to buy an old one, because first of all, the old one is not much cheaper than the new one. Secondly, it can better represent your aesthetic taste. It's really impressive. The third point is, think about it. Who was wearing a Daytona all those years ago, right? All right, that's about it for the review of this watch. We're all very familiar with the Daytona, so this was mainly just a showcase. We'll see you in the next episode.